Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Ben talks about applications of herbicides and nutrients to keep in mind for frost and wheat spring greenup. We're gearing up for planting season. Hear what Lynn does to get ready to plant. Next week, we start a new series in the field with our area sales managers. You'll hear about what's going on in their specific territories in the Midwest and Mid-South.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have our regulars, Ben, Lynn, and Turk, and we're going to start with Ben this week. What do you got for us, Ben?
The weather's warming up, which is nice. It's getting into that time of year where we got to start thinking about, or we should be thinking about almost immediately, what we're going to do with our wheat crop and our alfalfa stands that are out there. So I got my first text message from a area sales manager and a customer where they had a little bit of thinner wheat stand than what they would have liked. So they had some frost in the ground on Monday, got some nitrogen put down, and got a half-inch of rain or so on it on Tuesday, and he sent me pictures on Wednesday, and man, the crop looked really nice. I mean, it's happening that fast, that it's that time of year that we need to be putting nitrogen on wheat. There's some things to be thinking about when you're putting that nitrogen on the wheat. Are you going to be coming back across it again with nitrogen? Is this just your first build program? What's your soil type look like? Is it going to hold on to all that nitrogen if you put on your entire 70, 80 pounds worth? What are you thinking about is this super high management wheat? Is this the time frame to be putting like a Palisade product on, a growth regulator? What's your weed control look like out there? Are you going to be using Harmony or Husky, or do you have grass out there for like a product like PowerFlex early on in the spring? Those are all things that we have to be out and scouting right now so that we can make some decisions when there is a little bit of frost in the ground in the next week or two, and getting our nitrogen, sulfur, all those other products applied.
The critical point about nitrogen on wheat, particularly when you have a thin stand, is you want to encourage tillering. And when that wheat just starts to green up, that's when you got to have that nitrogen there to encourage that tillering, particularly when you got a thin stand. And then you might increase your rate just a little bit if you do have thin standing to encourage that tillering. The other thing that's important on wheat is, like you said, that sulfur piece. I think that's really, really critical. But get that nitrogen on early, and then keep in mind that the nitrogen is primarily helping you on the plumpness of the grain, the test weight, and overall quality of that. That phosphate and potash you put on last fall is really like corn. It is determining the wheat yield early, and the nitrogen is the finishing component. And again, I agree with you, Ben. If you have the opportunity to split it, it's not a bad idea, because that improves your standability, because you don't push it all there. And so, just in general, keep in mind that wheat is becoming much more popular. We do have a variety that's going to be coming out in 2025 that's probably going to be earlier than anything we've ever seen. So we're going to push that double crop opportunity to the north a lot farther, and plus create more yield potential for the farmers down south. So stay tuned for that.
So Ben, when's the right time to put it on? Can you put it on frozen ground?
I would not apply it to frozen ground, but that frosted ground where you can still carry the machine and not leave ruts, maybe only leaving lugs.
So if you can go out there and put it on, as long as it's going to get above freezing sometime in the next 24 hours.
Yep, that's when I really like to see it. So you want to minimize your compaction, because compaction is not going to help you at all when you're out there when it's too wet. So get it on in the first couple hours of the day, and we're going to have plenty of opportunity, plenty of days for that application to work. The picture that I was sent from the area sales manager, the wheat was planted October 20th. So that is why, we have a lot of that around here as well. That those are in those instances, in those situations where you don't have the stand that you like, this is the time frame that is extremely critical. A lot of the wheat doesn't get nitrogen put on it till April around here usually, when the wheat's up about that high, and you can still use liquid nitrogen and not burn it too bad. But in the instances where we're a little bit more finicky, this is the time frame that we got to be looking at.
Yeah, 1 head per square foot is a bushel, so you're trying to get as many heads out there as you possibly can. So if you have a thin stand, you got to encourage that tillering to catch up, and that's the critical point right now. And again, I think you hit it right on the head as far as when do you do it. It's when you can get out there early, first thing in the morning, and spread the fertilizer on, but by 10 o'clock, you got to get off the field because it's getting too greasy.
When you look at some of the world record holders on wheat, a lot of those guys are a lower planted population with a lot of tillering that comes through that. So, one thing that we've noticed last couple of years is that guys maybe haven't been completely satisfied with their stand as we come into green up, but they're extremely satisfied when they come to the yield side of it, because that wheat will tiller, and they'll, like Joe was saying, we'll get those extra heads out there and still have very adequate yields.
Yeah, I think the world record was set in a magazine article that came out that was passed on to us this week or last week. 264 or 267 bushel per acre is what it was set at, and then it's recommended like half of the planting rate that I would be pushing for the average grower in the United States.
Was that in England? Was that?
This one was, I believe, in England.
Yeah. Just so you know, that's the potential wheat, but you got to keep in mind England has much cooler temperatures during, just like corn, when you have that cooler temperatures during the grain fill, the more extended grain fill. So they have a little longer extended grain fill. And actually my dad went over to England with a group back in the 80s and came back with all these ideas that are just starting to come in reality here in the U.S., the tram lines and the split applications of fertilizer. In other words, they were managing wheat way before we were here in the United States. And then we went down to another friend of my dad's, Billy Joe Miles, down in Owensboro, Kentucky, and they were adapting that back in the early 90s. So I think wheat has always been a stepchild for many farmers. In other words, you plant it, put some fertilizer on, see what you get. But now we're seeing higher levels of management, and we're seeing, right now I think a lot of farmers expect 70, 80 bushel yields. And many times we can go over 100. I mean, in fact, we had well over 100 in some of our yield monitor spots in the field, 120, 130, last year that we got reports on. So it's possible. And with the double crop option, particularly on what I call the more marginal ground, that's the opportunity. And if we can come out with this new variety that's even earlier than anything we've ever seen before, we're gonna really attack that double crop yield too.
Now that we have equipment that you can actually get the soybean seed in the ground for the double crop, that's going to be the key.
Yeah, and keep in mind, if you don't have a drill, 15-inch planters can plant wheat, and we've got folks doing that. And we're going to be in an upcoming episode. We're going to go out to the field and show you what that looks like, planted in a diamond format. So. Wheat is something that farmers should be looking at, and also from this conservation standpoint too. A lot of guys are planting cover crops. Wheat is a cover crop in the fall.
Absolutely correct.
So, anything else, Ben?
That's what we should be thinking about right now.
Lynn?
I'm going to take it to our folks that don't dabble in wheat right now. Driving around, I've just kind of noticed that it looks like this year we've been a little bit light on our snowfall in southeast Iowa here, and some of our residue just looks like it's not getting broke down yet. So as I look at that, some of the things that Ben brought up, though, we have to take into account with if wheat's greening up, some of our winter annuals will start to green up as well. So as we push forward into the spring, get out there and scout your fields. Make sure you're looking at your fields as the winter annuals are starting to come in, and make sure that doesn't get too far ahead of you, especially for the no-till guys. It seems like we have some issues with cover crops as well, let alone winter annuals. So making sure that your planter is set correctly, making sure that you're not waiting to the last minute actually on that. There's a lot of tricks and techniques to managing that. So right now, what I'm looking for on my no-till stuff, I'm going out and judging that residue to see how much work I need to do on the planter to make sure everything goes in the dirt correctly, make sure my row cleaners are all working properly to make sure I get that stuff pushed out of the way. And I'm evaluating my cover crop stand too to make sure that, if I need to go in a little bit earlier and terminate that. So we're getting to that point in time, just like wheat, where we have to start managing that. All those are great tools, but if it's not managed properly, it could be, at the end of the day, a very big detriment to your cash crop. And, cover crops are nice, but if they're taken away from our yield, then they're not really doing what we want them to do.
Very good. Turk?
You guys have been talking about next year and what we need to do. I'm going to talk about what we've already done and how to make sure that you're taking care of what you got, and that's the grain in the bin. it needs to be looked at right now with the warm up that we're starting to see. There can be some problems show up in some bins, and I've actually heard some bins that had to be cleaned out because the beans were going out of condition in those bins. So you got to make sure that you're looking at what you got in the bin, and if you see icicles on top of that bin, you got a problem. So you need to make sure that you're getting out there and looking at your crop that you have in there. And then also make sure that you're looking at pricing opportunities, because there's nothing worse than have to sell when you have no opportunities. You've got to clean that bin out because it's going out of condition. You're subject to the market at that time. You can't forward contract, you can't do anything. You got to take it to town, you got to move it unless you got other bins to put it in. But that's the main thing that I wanted to talk about. We had a crop report come out this week that was kind of a ho-hum crop report, didn't really move the market one way or the other much, but that's behind us now. The next major crop report or market mover potentially is the planting projections in March, and until then we'll be watching South America weather and what it's going to do, and God forbid we have another world event that like China or like Russia invading Ukraine, China do something stupid with Taiwan or whatever. I don't know. We don't need that.
No, I agree. There's always that unknown that can catch us. So appreciate that, Turk. Also, I wanted to let our listeners and watchers know that next week we'll start featuring reports from the field from our individual area sales managers. We're going to go through all the locations, all of our territories, so you'll get reports more local to you in the next few weeks. So watch for your local area sales manager to be the star of Cup of Joe. So we're looking forward to that. So that brings us to our corny jokes, and I worked a little extra half hour on these jokes, so I think you're going to like them. Okay, all right. Well, again, you be the judge. All right. My granddaughter the other day asked me for a pet spider for her birthday. So I went to the local pet shop, and they cost $30. I thought that was way too expensive. I can get one cheaper off the web. All right.
Yeah.
Man walked into a seafood restaurant, and he asked for a lobster tail. The waitress smiled and said, "Once upon a time, there was this handsome lobster." Lobster tail, fairy tale. Okay. Maybe I didn't do so good. All right. This one here, you got to end up on a high note, okay? I know all of you out there have a significant other, okay? Just think about that. Back in the day when you were courting, you know how that all went, okay? Okay. When your girlfriend comes home in a white suit, covered in bee stings, and smelling like honey, you know she's a keeper.
Still processing that one, Joe.
Still processing that. All right. We did that visually, yeah. But anyhow, thanks for watching this week and listening on podcasts. We sincerely appreciate your business. We hope you got your seed ordered. If not, we can take care of you. We've got good supplies, and we'll see you next week. Take care.